Hi, welcome to Global Village TV. At Global Village TV, we engage our viewers with some of the day-to-day issues affecting the global village. We stand up against human rights abuses, social injustice, environmental pollution, child abuse, abject poverty, and many more. We have something for viewers of all ages, children, the youth, adults, young and old. So stay tuned in and don't go anywhere.
Hello. My name is Dr. Pepra Jemfi, medical doctor, author, evangelist. Today, I'm introducing a short documentary titled Africa, a multi-tragic case. Africa, a multi-tragic case. Long, long ago, Mother Africa lived at peace with herself. Residents engaged in peasant farming using simple instruments. They grew what they ate and ate what they produced. They engaged in animal rearing. Besides rearing their own animals, they fish the seas and the streams in the area. Some also engaged in hunting for the wild animals that abounded there. It was not heaven on earth. Conflicts did develop among the various population groups. Some of the conflicts resulted in the use of weapons, but they were primitive weapons produced by the indigenes. They built simple homes using materials available to them. They clothed themselves, albeit scantily, with the materials at their disposal and conducive to the hot climate. They traded with one another through barter and later through medium exchange, such as shells, gold, and ingots. It was not heaven on earth, as already said. As usually happens among brothers and sisters, conflicts arose among them time to time. Such conflicts, sadly, sometimes resulted in the exchange of blows. Unfortunately, in some rare instances, they resorted to weapons to settle their score. The weapons involved were primitive: clubs, bows, arrows, etc., produced by themselves. Somehow, they eventually found ways to settle their conflicts, although from time to time they erupted again. For hundreds, if not thousands of years, the simple, uncomplicated style of living prevailed on the land. One day, as a group of residents went strolling along one of the beautiful beaches of their paradise-like dwelling, they spotted a strange-looking boat on the horizon. As might be expected, the peculiar object aroused their curiosity. They became even more curious when they realized the ship-like entity did not look like any of those they were familiar with. Eventually, the vessels docked on the shore. Out sprang a few strange-looking beings who, though human, bore a lighter skin complexion and dress. It was a strange meeting, for neither of the two parties understood the language of the other. They had to resort to signs and gestures to communicate with each other. The signs and gestures made by the newcomers led the indigenous residents to assume the new arrivals had come from a far, far distant land. And that was what it turned out to be. Eventually, a trade in goods developed between the newcomers and the natives. In the main, it involved the natives exchanging gold, which abounded on their land, for clothing, wine, weapons, and offered by the newcomers. What began as a trade in material goods eventually turned sinister. Instead of being satisfied with the material goods offered by the indigenes, the newcomers began to demand human in exchange for the goods offered. Thus began the transatlantic slave trade. From the late 15th century right to the middle of the 19th century, in a period spanning over 400 long years, more than 15 million men, women, and children were transported in the most inhumane and terrible circumstances from the serene environments of their native Africa to faraway destinations in the Americas, the Caribbean, Europe, etc. After the slave trade had gone on for over 400 years, it was eventually abolished in 1833. One would think the end of the slave trade would end European involvement in Africa. Far from the truth. Far from the truth. Having established that Africa abounded in huge, seemingly endless, precious resources, both above the surface of the earth, timber, fertile agricultural land, exotic animals, and also beneath the soil, gold, diamond, bauxite, petroleum oil, etc., they decided to stay on. Thus started from around 1880, European nations focused on taking over African lands. A fierce competition ensued among the newcomers for the precious minerals and other resources of the Sunshine Continent. Thus began the scramble for Africa. The scramble for Africa led to rivalries between the European powers, in particular between Great Britain and France. To restore harmony among the antagonizing European nations scrambling for Africa, Emperor Otto von Bismarck of Germany called a meeting of European powers in Berlin in late 1884. The conference opened in Berlin on 15 November 1884 with 14 countries: Austria-Hungary, Belgium, Denmark, France, Germany, Great Britain, Italy, the Netherlands, Portugal, Russia, Spain, Sweden, Norway, Turkey, and the US in attendance. The historic meeting led to the partition of Africa among the European colonial powers. In the first time in human history, the whole continent was partitioned among foreign powers without the original inhabitants being consulted, let alone invited the table. So the partition of Africa was sealed. By January 1, 1905, the colonization of Africa was complete. The colonial powers would hold their grips on Africa unchallenged for almost half a century. With Africa partitioned and subdued, the inhabitants had no choice but to do to the bidding of their colonial masters. In the course of time, the European colonial powers got themselves embroiled in what in effect was an inter-European conflict. In the end, the war became known as World War I. Barely 2 decades after the end of World War I, the Europeans again got themselves embroiled in yet another conflict. Once again, what began as inner European conflict also became known as World War II. On both occasions, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, Africans were conscripted in the good proportion of the cases against their will to fight alongside their respective colonial masters. In due course, Africans, the rise of Nkrumah of Ghana, agitated for independence from the colonial powers. On 6 March 1957, Ghana, previously known as Gold Coast, a British colony, became the first country in sub-Saharan Africa to proclaim independence. This is what Nkrumah said on the Independence Night. At long last, the battle has ended, and thus Ghana, the beloved country, is free forever. We have awakened. We will not sleep anymore. Today, from now on, there is a new Africa. Well, our independence is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of the African continent, Nkrumah declared. Ghana was followed by several other countries into their independence. It became independent. Eventually, the total independence of Africa from foreign colonial rule was achieved. In due course, it became clear to Nkrumah, who spearheaded the independence movement, that the only way Africa could make progress was to work together for their common good. So he began to work tirelessly towards uniting Africa. The climax of his activities was marked by his historic speech that he delivered to his fellow Africans on May 24, 1963, in Addis Ababa. I quote from him. He said, "There is no time to waste. We must unite now or perish. I am confident that our concerted effort and determination shall lay here the foundation for a continental Union of African states. The whole continent has imposed a mandate upon us to lay the foundation of our union at this conference. Africa must unite or perish," he urged the others. He continued, "For the sake of the impoverished masses, let us combine our energies. If we work together, we should be able effectively to harness our resources for our common good and eventually make us financially independent of others. Financial independence will earn us respect from others. On the other hand, if we retain the division, artificial borders, etc., imposed on us by outsiders, we shall become individually impoverished. Others usually ridicule a poor person. Without money, you will continue going around without begging others. Which of you, my dear brothers and sisters, want to be a friend of a beggar? So please, let us together, come together, for together we are strong. He kept pleading. The impoverished mass of Africa will not forgive us if we miss the opportunity. Apparently, the majority of those present were more interested in their selfish interests than the interests of impoverished masses of Africa. So instead of taking steps to do away with the borders, they initiated steps towards the cementing of their frontier. So today, Africa is made up of 54 separate nations. One would have thought African political leaders would work together and place the well-being of the masses priority. They will give priority to the well-being of the masses. But well, unfortunately, that so far has not been the case. By their behavior, the African political elite create the impression that they are only interested in enriching themselves. Indeed, African countries are known to run some of the most expensive government structures in the whole world. They have created huge elephant parliaments, elephant cabinets, paying themselves ex gratia, huge salaries to keep comfortable, whilst African masses wallow in abject poverty. Creating ministries from nowhere seems to have become the favorite pastime of some African leaders. Take my native Ghana as an example. Whereas Kwame Nkrumah, the first president, could do with only 12 cabinet ministers, the current regime has increased the number to 30. They are ministers for all sorts of portfolio. Minister for transport, another minister for roads and highways, still another minister for railway development. The list of exotic ministers goes on and on. Each of the 30 ministers has at least one deputy minister. Yes, indeed, today, 54 well-fed, well-nourished, well-catered for heads of state are in the helm of affairs, leading a bunch of political elites who are ruling after Africa. The well-placed political elites of Africa are lording it over 1 billion mostly impoverished masses of Africa. Africa has got rid of European colonial masters, only to be colonized by the ruling African political class. So, the multi-tragedy destiny of Africa lingers on, till only God knows when. Thank you very much for your time.
Hi, welcome to Global Village TV. At Global Village TV, we engage our viewers with some of the day-to-day issues affecting the global village. We stand up against human rights abuses, social injustice, environmental pollution, child abuse, abject poverty, and many more. We have something for viewers of all ages, children, the youth, adults, young and old. So stay tuned in and don't go anywhere.